In February of 2014, the Mid-Continent Railway Museum and SPEC Machines hosted an open house for the rebuild of the Chicago and Northwestern 1385. It's now 2015, and we're back at the facility in Middleton, Wisconsin, 1 year later to check on the rebuild of the historic steam locomotive. How's the progress been so far, you ask? Well, let's find out. During the weekend of February 21st and 22nd, 2015, a second open house was organized at the facility by the Mid-Continent Railway Museum and SPEC Machines. It was well fitting for both groups to hold this event once again, based on the tremendous turnout from last year's event.
Last year's attendance was phenomenal. We had planned on, we had hoped for 300 or 400 people throughout the weekend. Last year we estimate there was probably 2,000 people here throughout the weekend. And it brought people in that had never seen a locomotive before, had never heard about Mid-Continent Railway, all the way from that type of person to people who had been on board the 1385 during its excursions out on the main line. So it brought people together, and it brought really a lot of interest back into what we're doing with this locomotive. And a lot of people who had been kind of disconnected for a number of years as it sat idle at the museum had now really come out to see what was going on, and just spurred a ton of interest within the rail fan community and in the community in general in southeastern Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest.
And with that, interest for the 1385's return to steam has brought in even more support for the project, ranging from generous donations to those putting in hours of volunteer work on a craft that has now been considered as an ancient language to many.
It's brought a lot of new faces to the museum, people that come in and help. We have a lot of paid staff. SPEC Machine, Steve Rodebush and his partner Bruce have worked very hard on the project, and others within their organization, but we've also worked hard on having work weekends to help out on the projects, where we can bring in volunteers on projects. So recently, right after the beginning of the year, we did a project where we brought in the crews and they did the complete priming and painting of the frame. We worked with an outside painting contractor. They came in, supervised the operations, and then worked with our volunteers to apply the primer and paint over a 2-day period, and the results are just gorgeous.
This is part of the museum's mission in educating people of how were railroads relevant. Well, this is a rare opportunity to see how a locomotive is put together. So what do all these parts do? You can read about this or that in a book, or somebody says something, a driving box does this, a wedge does that. Here it is. This is how it moves, this is what makes it move, or this is what it makes move. And it's meant to do this, it's meant to take up wear here. You have to allow for movement over there. These things combined, this has to be square, this has to be straight to this reference point. These are things that we've learned too.
When walking around the facility, you notice the hard work being brought to light during that 1 year time span, with the different parts having been both repaired and beautifully restored. One could easily mistake these parts as looking just like they did when first manufactured and ready for final assembly at the Alco factory in New York.
What I'm standing by is one of the big things. The wheel sets were set out to Strasburg, the Strasburg Railroad in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. Out there, the wheels had a substantial amount of work done. The wheel centers were turned. We found wheel centers that were out of round, so they turned the wheel centers. New tires were manufactured and applied. 4 of the 6 crank pins were replaced. The other 2 were turned. Journals were turned, so main journals, and the hub liners, which you can see behind me here, 5 of the 6 hub liners were turned. The 6th one was actually replaced. So they did a substantial amount of work, and we put together a set of wheels today that are a 0-mile set of wheels for the locomotive. On the frame, over the last year, there was a lot of frame repairs that needed to be done, so there was a lot of welding repair done to the frame. It was also determined the foot casting needed to be replaced, so we have designed and have built a new foot casting or a new foot weldment. We replaced the casting with a weldment, and that new foot casting weldment is in place over there and is ready to be put in place. We've also had all the driving boxes have been machined up. We put new wear liners on the driving boxes, and then also turned the crown brasses to fit the new journal diameters. All the spring rigging has been gone through. All of the pins and bushings have been removed, remade, and they're ready to be installed. You can see some of that here below me. The frame has been painted, all the spring rigging and that stuff has been painted.
A huge amount of the time has been used in research. Research, making measurements, finding out what was worn, how it was compensated for, how are we going to compensate for it now, what parts need to be made brand new, what parts can we repair, and how do we go about those repairs. One of the tools that we picked up in the last year is a micrometer that can measure within 1/2 of 1/1000th of an inch over a span of 250 inches. So there were literally months spent in taking the measurements on the frame before we could even decide what parts needed to be made, how thick. And then in the last 6 weeks, 20 or 30 different parts have been machined out of raw stock and are ready to go on the engine. Many of them have been applied to the engine. There's going to be some fitting, but at least now the parts that have been manufactured are close enough that we can loose fit things together and see what things are going to bind, where is it going to be tight, what needs to be shaved a little bit here and moved a little bit there.
While the open house showcased what has already been completed, the public also got a chance to see what was next for the project. CJ Woodworking of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin was also in attendance, as they have been contracted to build a brand new cab for the locomotive.
Rebuilding the cab, have the back to what it was originally on the blueprints. Most of the construction's all mortise and tenons. It's all loose fit so that as the train's going down the tracks that it can move around and not destroy itself, and a lot of it too with the moisture content in the wood so everything moves. And it's got it's kind of a mock-up here, the sides. It's got the beaded ceiling panels. The whole unit will actually hold itself together just with its joinery, but the original cab has all the castings and the brackets that'll get added on. So we took the whole cab to use that and to compare with the prints, and then to be able to get all the castings and original parts back off to put onto this one once it's all done. This one's all white oak. The other one was all out of poplar, which the water deteriorated much quicker than the white oak, is much more moisture resistant. And even according to the prints, some were white oak, some were poplar. I guess it's just a matter of which they had built it on, but like I said, the white oak should last much longer than the poplar did.
The boiler is finishing up the design, and we'll start building on the boiler. We are also looking at appliances, and we're going to start planning on the appliances and what we're going to do with appliances. So all of those things can come back together at the same time and be assembled here at SPEC Machine. At SPEC Machine, while those things are happening on the outside, some of the things that are left to do is valve gear parts. We need to valve gear in motion. We're going to bore cylinders. We're going to replace valve cages and go through the valve gear. We also have brake rigging and brake rigging components to finish up here at SPEC.
It's true that more work is yet to be completed, as the remaining pieces to this massive puzzle are now being brought to full attention. For the team at both Mid-Continent and SPEC, there's still this great feeling of accomplishment, as well as excitement and ambition to turn this dream into reality once again.
There hasn't been a lot of challenges financially. We have great donors, so a lot of times on a project like this, finances become a struggle. With the Wagner Foundation being involved in their challenge grant, finances have not been a worry on this project. We continue on without going, we're short here, we're short there, well, we can only do this much. So that has worked well. With the task force that's put in place to work with this, that I work with, they have been great. SPEC Machine has been great.
The work that's been done by SPEC Machine has been phenomenal. You know, these guys have been learning as much as any of the rest of us, and the way that they're going about it is just fantastic. You know, I can't say enough about Steve and Bruce.
Part of the historical part of it, I love history, and I love making sure we keep, for next generation. And probably the most exciting part for me is just figuring out their techniques and, really knowing that they're good craftsmen and they could hold tolerance. And just all the different research to be done to do the job properly.
I think the other thing on this project is the community support. One of the things that has been really surprising, one of the things that's been really overwhelming almost is the amount of community support. The support from contractors, things like that, yeah, we'll come in and help you, and the very low or limited cost. I mean, we have seen donations come in for helping with painting and moving equipment, and I mean, just a general excitement within the southeastern Wisconsin area to see this locomotive run again, and that has brought in a lot of in-kind donations that without the help of companies like that, we would never be able to do. Where we have an issue, and I think the reason I can say we don't have been a challenge to overcome is because when we've had those challenges and we make a phone call, someone is there saying, hey, I can help you with that. Whether it's moving wheel sets like this or loading equipment, or hey, we were supposed to have this, but that didn't work out. What can you do for us? Everybody in this area has just been huge on helping out with that.
It's been a huge journey of learning. We've learned what the railroads did. We have had a real wealth of knowledge from other people doing restorations. It's a very small world, and for the most part, very generous, because we all know a lot of us know each other, or we have gotten to know each other, and by trading thoughts and ideas, it helps. It helps everybody. We've had other people say, how did you solve this problem? We've gotten ideas, ask people, okay, how did you solve this problem? And we've gotten good answers. Right? And that's the best part is people have been so generous with their answers. The other folks within the industry.
Whether you're young or old, near or far away, generous support for the project is always welcome by the Mid-Continent Railway Museum. How can one help out in any way, you might ask?
In general, there's many ways to support. One is financially. I mean, it takes a lot of financial support to support the museum. So financial support, even if it's a small contribution, every dollar helps make projects like this and other projects at the museum happen. The other one is just, to me, is kind words. When people stop by and say, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? And really give positive feedback to the projects that are happening. I mean, there's days that any project museum can become wearing on a person. A lot of people put in a lot of hard work and effort. So just that positive reinforcement, hey, this is looking great. Hey, thanks for the input. When we post stuff out on the internet and Facebook, the positive feedback, I'll go through, I read those, because it's just enlightening to see the people from all over the nation and the world that see what's happening, and they're happy to see steam run again. So I mean, a lot of it's the financial, the kind words, and then if you're interested in helping out, there's volunteer opportunities both on this project and at the museum as a whole that can help keep the museum a live, living, breathing resource for us in the state and the nation and the world.
For more information on the rebuild of the Chicago and Northwestern 1385, or to help contribute to the project, visit the Mid-Continent Railway Museum's website at www.midcontinent.org.